It's time to get out of pocket. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Michael Davis, and we are live on Boom Broadcasting for Out of Pocket with Michael Davis. And free agency, it is a frenzy, and it is here. NFL teams are able to talk to players. There's no such thing as tampering, as one of my good friends say. And I'm going to welcome him in for a couple minutes. Guys, this has been a crazy day. We're going to give you the best coverage that we can possibly give because there's a lot of news going down. We're also going to have some of the news scrolling down on the bottom, as you can see right here. And we're going to try to talk through it all. And I couldn't do it alone. You guys saw him drop 3 from deep. Now 3 times a week earlier this afternoon, talking the NBA. Now he has switched gears, taught the NFL. We're bringing in Jason from 3 from deep. So, Jason, I know you're a Giants fan. I'm a Cowboys fan, so I had to rep. But I don't know why I, just had a brain fart and invite another NFC East guy into the building. He's one of the few Washington Commanders guys I know. But at the same time, he had a better season than I did. So I know he's about to rub it in my face a little bit. And they're making some moves in free agency. I'm bringing in the guy from the Blue Ridge Football Podcast who just dropped a show this week talking about like the realignment with the high schools. So you guys want to check that out. We're bringing in Aikman Chambers. Aikman, it's good to have you on. I'm glad the angle's working out to where you can kind of block the flag with your head a little bit. But guys, this is
Giants in there. There we go.
Oh,
my Giants in the background there.
Gross.
I feel a little better. I feel a little better now.
But guys, this is a huge free agency period. And so, like, before we start diving into a lot of these moves, I want to know what stood out to you the most since free agency started about 5.5 hours ago. It started around noon. It's about 5:30 right now, and we're bringing you live coverage throughout the day. So you guys got yourselves covered at least for the next hour. Aikman, you're welcome back on the show. So I'm going to start with you. Is there anything huge that like took you by surprise today?
I mean, we all expected New England to heavily spend the money they had available. They definitely have been doing that. Milton Williams getting that $26 million a year guaranteed over the next 4 years. The defensive tackle from Philadelphia, I think that carries a little bit of shine from the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl that comes with it. I mean, it's one of those things. I think Milton Williams is a really good defensive tackle, but when you're also having to be like the third guy in rotation in Philly's D tackle unit, like, when you're being cycled into the game after guys like Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, you're already going up against offensive guards and a center that's been wore down by 2 of the premier D tackles in the NFL. So I'm going to be curious to see how this works with him, kind of being, taking that next step into being a premier starting defensive tackle in the NFL. And then outside of that, I'll just drop, just because nobody had heard the name Laramie Tunsil in any trade discussions for anything up till about an hour ago when everything went down with Washington trading for Laramie Tunsil to get a guy who's 30, almost 31 years old, has 2 years left on his deal before, and you got to believe an extension's going to come for one of the premier starting left tackles in the NFL. So I think that's kind of been two of my bigger spots to start today.
And we're going to let you deep dive into your Commanders too, because not only did they get Laramie Tunsil, as you're seeing scroll on the bottom right now, Javon Kinlaw, the former 49er, is also in the building. As I told you guys, this is your place for NFL free agent news, and I do have some more. The Eagles are trading Kenny Pickett away to the Cleveland Browns.
Wow.
The Cleveland Browns are giving up a 5th-round pick this year and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So we're going to talk a little bit about our NFC East rival, the defending champion Super Bowl Philadelphia Eagles. But Jason, along with that trade that just broke, Kenny Pickett to Cleveland, what stands out to you about the biggest surprise so far in free agency?
Well, big picture for me was the amount of guaranteed money that was flying around. So these teams are definitely taking advantage of that salary cap hike this year. So just seeing some of the guaranteed cash flying was uh, eye opening, some of the money that was being handed out. And for me, the biggest thing was the Chicago Bears. They needed that offensive line help. They have done a lot of moves even before the draft. You figured, well, they would maybe do some draft moves. They may get a free agent here or there. But the trade to get Joe Tooney from the Rams, Jonah Jackson, that they're just putting money in that offensive line. They got that center, Drew Dahlman, signed him to a boatload of money, 3 years, $42 million, $28 million guaranteed. So Chicago Bears, 10th in the draft. Are they going to spend that draft pick on an offensive lineman now? Or are they going to start looking at maybe replacing a Keenan Allen and going for a big hitter as far as a wide receiver? So very impressed with the Bears were doing even before, the offseason even started. So getting that need there to protect baby bear Caleb Williams. So that was very impressive. So but man, the money flying around right now is crazy. Josh Allen back up the Brinks truck. He got a boatload of money. So it has been a wild 24 hours here in the NFL.
Yeah, and some of these deals like trades or rumors started happening over the weekend, and so we missed a lot. As I mentioned a few moments ago, Kenny Pickett traded to the Cleveland Browns, probably getting past Deshaun Watson and his time there, which I think we could all agree it's just time to move on from Deshaun Watson. But the bigger news, quarterback-wise, was Sam Darnold. People didn't know if Sam Darnold was going to come back to Minnesota, if he was going to land with a team like Vegas, a team like the New York Giants of Jason's. But instead, Sam Darnold decides to sign 3 years, $110 million to a team that's been trading away all their assets. Like they released Tyler Lockett. They trade DK Metcalf to the Pittsburgh Steelers, which we'll touch on later on this episode as well. But Sam Darnold obviously going to be the guy to be in Seattle with potentially a rebuild. I mean, this doesn't make sense to me. Jason, when you look at what Seattle did with going ahead and signing Sam Darnold to big money, but yet they're giving away a lot of his weapons. Like, what's Seattle doing?
I don't know. It's an interesting move for the Seattle Seahawks, especially selling everybody off, especially trading away DK Metcalf. I mean, you have Jackson Smith and Jigba, who is turning out to be a fantastic wide receiver, but your run game is suspect. Walker always hurt. Charbonnet looks good, but is he consistent enough? Their offensive line is horrendous. They have no Legion of Boom left. That defense is decimated. The 12th man is all but invisible. Seattle used to be one of the hardest stadiums to play football in. They don't have that home field advantage like they used to. So this was a curious signing. Great for Darnold. He's getting away from the East Coast. So I think he's leaving those East Coast ghosts as far away as he can get. So he got away from there. I think he's going to do well in Seattle, but they got to get him some weapons. They got to get him an offensive line. I know they got the 18th pick in the draft. Do they trade up and try to get him a weapon like a McMillan out of Arizona, or pick up some of the other top wide receiver prospects? What do they do on that offensive line? I haven't seen a lot of signing with them. So definitely a head scratcher to say the least, but you got to figure there's a lot of teams out there that were trying to sign Sam Darnold that cannot get him. So Seattle kind of kept him away from these other quarterback needy teams out there.
Yeah, there are a few teams who have holes at quarterback. And you guys can be part of the show. Like Aaron Schneider, the host of the Gridiron Address, saying, stopping by real quick, say he hates Milton Williams. We're going to tell everybody why Aaron would hate Milton Williams, who signed with the New England Patriots today for $26 million a year. And that's going to be our next topic. But Aikman, Sam Darnold, Seattle, again, like Jason was saying, like the Legion of Boom days are over. Like you're looking at a team who won the division, but you get rid of DK, you get rid of Tyler, and you're just looking at the team and you're like, this looks like a full rebuild. So why would you go ahead and throw all this money at a quarterback who might not be able to lead you into the playoffs?
Well, that's the thing. Like, I'm wondering on this deal. Sorry, there was breaking news just coming across my phone here in front of me that San Francisco corner Charvarius Ward has reached an agreement on a 3-year deal worth up to $60 million, including $35 million in guaranteed money. And a $20 million signing bonus with the Indianapolis Colts.
No.
Oh. Ooh.
No. You're joking.
Nope. This is according to Adam Schefter.
I saw the Dobbs news, but I didn't see that yet. But man, that's poor.
Yeah.
The Dallas Cowboys.
I wanted Ward with that, especially seeing Jordan Lewis go to Jacksonville.
Yeah, Jerry's been quiet today. You got your long snapper back though.
Stop. Okay, stop. I heard those jokes last year. I can't put up with them again. Charvarius Ward to Indianapolis. Wow.
Yeah, but that's a lot of money. $35 million guaranteed, $20 million signing bonus. Man.
Colts needed that help though, but man, that is a lot of cash.
But anyway, back to what you said with Sam Darnold before that. My thing is now, number one, if you take anybody for Seattle in fantasy football this year, it's got to be Jackson Smith and Jigba because they're going to have to force feed him the football to have a chance. You don't know if Kenneth Walker can stay healthy consistently to provide any amount of running game there. And this is a unique rebuild. You got to wonder what else Seattle's got up their sleeves because, I mean, we've only seen Darnold be effective when he had weapons around him like true weapons. And he also had Kevin O'Connell calling his plays. So that also makes a difference too. But we're going to see. I've just been puzzled by everything Seattle's done over the last 3 or 4 days because I think there's a lack of vision here, or at least maybe obviously they see it in-house in Seattle, but to the outsider's perspective all across the country, I can't connect the dots at what Seattle's doing.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense because it was like, okay, they're propositioning themselves to go from NFC West where they like kind of hovered around that first place. The Rams obviously won the tiebreaker. And it's like, okay, well, Geno's getting older. DK Metcalf wants all this money. Tyler Lockett's getting older. Let's blow it up. And they probably saw Sam Darnold do a lot in Minnesota. And so I don't blame Seattle from like moving on from some of their older pieces, but why would you spend all that money on Sam Darnold, who won't have Justin Jefferson this year? He'll have Jackson Smith and Jigba and company. And so that's what you would have to deal with if you're the Seattle Seahawks. But I do want to touch on this because it is breaking news minutes ago. Aikman sharing what Adam Schefter reported. Charvarius Ward signed with the Indianapolis Colts, 3-year, worth up to $60 million, 35 in guaranteed, 20 in a signing bonus with the Indianapolis Colts. The 49ers are also looking at a lot of their players leaving, like Javon Kinlaw signed with Aikman's Commanders, which we'll dive into later on in the show. They're looming with Brock Purdy's contract extension. Deebo Samuel finds himself in Pittsburgh. Talking about Seattle blowing it up, the 49ers look like they're blowing it up. Jason, was it smart to let this guy walk out of the building if you're the 49ers?
Man, I don't think so. And again, who knows what the 49ers are doing? Look, they're going to have to back up the truck to Brock Purdy right now. So that, I think, is their biggest deal. So after that, I don't know what those 49ers are doing. Some of these moves, again, there's certain teams that you're like, wow, that's a great job. And then there's teams where you kind of scratch your head and go, what are you guys doing? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So they obviously know what they're doing. As the 49ers go, I mean, that NFC West, It's not a real deep division. So, I mean, I think one or two pieces, if they can get some other guys in, if they can do well in the draft, they still have a chance because look at what Seattle's doing. They're blowing everything up too. The Arizona Cardinals are the Arizona Cardinals. So the 49ers and, the Rams, they have improved. So I think that's going to be the toughest competition in that division right now. But there's certain teams you scratch your head. And right now, 49ers, until they make the power move, there's got to be a reason for this. There's got to be a reason.
Yeah, and it looks like that reason might be for the 49ers to extend Brock Purdy, which may or may not even be a good idea to begin with. Mac also chiming in, host of Starstruck, co-host of Dad and the Boys. He's saying Charvarius Ward not worth that amount of money, especially with Dallas's situation with Deron Bland, Trayvon Diggs already in the building. But Aikman, Ward is a pretty big pickup for Indianapolis. I think it is money well deserved.
Yes, I agree that it's money well deserved. Now, the thing about it is too, I think if you're Indianapolis, you got to know that if you're going to run it back and give this Anthony Richardson experiment one more year, there's generally the chance that your defense is going to be on the field more than your offense because he has been known to turn the football over. His completion percentage is not very good. He struggles in that department. So put your chips on defense. Now, granted, the Colts did lose their best pass rusher today earlier, and Odengbo lost him to the Bears earlier today. So they lose a little bit of pass rush up front, gain it in the secondary with Ward. But if you're Indianapolis, if you can't figure out a way to put more than what you already have on offense to help Anthony Richardson, you've got to at least start to add to this defense because, there is a solid chance your defense is going to be on the field quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in Indianapolis, I feel like Anthony Richardson's a failed experiment, but that is a 30-minute episode for a whole other day because we have all this stuff coming in. And guys, broke minutes ago, Adam Schefter reported, Aikman shared it with us on air that Charvarius Ward going to the Indianapolis Colts, 3 years, $60 million. And we're going to turn our attention to some free agency news we learned earlier today. And I want to, and Max saying Indianapolis going after Peyton's nephew, Arch from Texas. I feel like everybody's going after him. So honestly, they're all wanting some Manning magic, if you will. But going back to this comment Aaron dropped to us at the beginning of the show that he hates Milton Williams. I want to explain to everyone if they don't understand. So a little after noon today, we got the report that Milton Williams was coming to Carolina, leaving the Philadelphia Eagles, leaving that overpowered Eagles defensive line to come to Carolina for about $20 million a year. That was the deal. It looked like everything was signed, sealed, delivered. But the thing is, nobody can sign right now. It's all verbal agreements. And so after the news broke that Milton was going to be a Carolina Panther, it wasn't long after that the news broke that Milton Williams would instead be a New England Patriot for $26 million a year. So the Patriots obviously saw, he'd accept 20. Well, what number do we need to bump it up to? And it was enough for $6 million more a year to get Milton Williams to go instead of the Carolina Panthers to go to the New England Patriots. Now the Patriots with Mike Vrabel have been making some serious moves. Milton on a Vrabel defense is enough to be fearsome of. I'm sure everyone on this panel is glad we don't have to see Milton twice a year and probably even seeing him only once every 4 years with the New England Patriots being another conference. Aikman, do you think Milton Williams went about this the right way? What exactly do you make of what we saw earlier this afternoon?
Well, first things first, you don't need to be somebody with the last name Williams and be involved with a Charlotte professional sports team when it comes to making deals as of late. First, it was Mark Williams from my Charlotte Hornets, and then now the deal with Milton Williams with the Panthers. So you got to hate it from that perspective for Panthers and Hornets fans together. But, listen, if anything, the Myles Garrett thing yesterday shows us that it's all about the money. You can say you want to play for a contender, or I want to play this, or I want to play that. When the cards are down and the chips are on the table, how much green is in the contract? Where's the guaranteed money at? Where's the roster bonus? All this other stuff. I think Milton Williams is going to be good in New England. I really do. And, I mean, when you're playing Josh Allen twice a year, you got to be able to get after the quarterback a little bit. And I think this is a step in the right direction for New England, because you can have Harold Landry on the outside and Milton Williams coming up the middle. So I think and again, it's Mike Vrabel. So Mike Vrabel is one of those guys where I couldn't believe he went last year without being a head coach, because I think he's a guy who should be a head coach, especially with some guys that have been given chances to be head coaches. So I think this could work out. New England's defense is going to be much improved because they've already got a young stud at corner in Christian Gonzalez, who has proven himself that I think is going to end up being really good. This New England defense is getting back to being a caliber defense that can help a young quarterback in Drake May.
And he does need help. If anyone listened to content over the last 365 days, I am not a believer in Drake May. I think he's Mitch Trubisky 2.0. So if you can get him any help that you want, and Mac agreeing, he's going to be tired. Drake May going interception, throwing interceptions and put Milton back on the field. But Jason, did Milton go about this the right way? Because, I mean, he better hope it works out in New England, because I don't know if another organization like the Panthers would trust him again with his business decisions.
Well, he just did the Duval move. So, I mean, you just watch the coach, Duval. I mean, you just watch the coach kind of backtrack. Look, the NFL stands for not for long. These players know that it's all about the guaranteed money, because at any moment these contracts could disappear. So they go where the money is. There's no love lost. I can't blame him. Yes, the fans. Yes, Aaron, I'm sorry for your team that you didn't land him. But business is business. And NFL is business. And if somebody hands and puts a paycheck in front of you, and one's $26 million a year, the other one's $20 million a year, what are you going to take? So you're going to take the bigger bag that pays for his taxes and everything too. So plus you can see that New England is spending money. So that team it wants to be a contender. And I think with Vrabel in the building, I think he has some cachet behind him also. So not only I think the money had something to do with it, I think Vrabel being there had a little bit to do with his decision too. But yeah, I mean, this is the NFL, baby. There ain't no love lost. The bigger the check, the faster you're going to leave.
And I'll go ahead and say, like, Mike Vrabel is probably a key factor to him choosing New England. But I think the bigger factor is he started looking, and it's like not only the money difference, but I mean, if you're going to go to a poor team, let it be the team that's paying you more. Carolina, if they were the Chiefs, if they were even return with the Philadelphia Eagles, if this was a team where you'd be like, okay, I just got a Super Bowl. Do I want to get back there? Let's go to an organization that will pay me enough to help that team get back there. Carolina, there is nothing really enticing about what they're doing, how they've ran their organization. I apologize, Aaron, but I mean, Carolina isn't that big of a destination. And it's not like a Florida or a Texas where you're like, oh, no state tax. Okay, my home game check's going to look a lot better than the rest. That's not the case for the Carolina Panthers. And Chris DeLuca, the host of Dugout Debrief, mentioning Kenny Pickett to Cleveland. Biggest news, we did drop that at the beginning of today's episode. So that's where you can get your free agency updates, is Out of Pocket. Right now, we're doing a free agency special. Kenny Pickett did go to Cleveland, and that is what's scrolling on the bottom as well. But the New England Patriots didn't just get Milton Williams. They really retooled the defensive side of the ball. They went and got Carlton Davis from Detroit, 3 years, $60 million, same amount of money that Charvarius Ward just got from the Indianapolis Colts. Harold Landry, former Tennessee Titan, very familiar with Mike Vrabel. 3 years, $43.5 million. Robert Spillane from Cody, from Drew Code Sports Talk, his Raiders, 3 year, $37 million. And to top it all off, talking about Kenny Pickett being the big news to Cleveland, Josh Dobbs, the big news to New England, going to the Patriots on a 2-year deal. So, hey, maybe if they put Josh Dobbs and, his big brain in there, maybe they win more games without Drake May on the field. Who knows? But the Patriots are making just serious moves. We saw earlier this weekend the Buffalo Bills signed Josh Allen to the biggest contract in history. It was like 6-year, $330 million. Buffalo's been the front runner for so long, but now that Mike Vrabel's coming in and things are starting to happen, Aikman, when you look at that division, have the Patriots made enough of a leap here in the last 6 hours to put themselves maybe in second place or even first place of that division?
Definitely not first place. I still got to see more out of Drake May before I even hesitate for Josh Allen to give up his throne on first place in the AFC East. I mean, now do I think they could be in contention for second? Miami's kind of a wild card there because you just don't know what version of the Dolphins you're going to get next year. Does Tua stay healthy? The situation with Tyreek Hill, still a lot of moving pieces there with the Dolphins. We saw the Jets make another quarterback move today with Justin Fields. You put him back with Garrett Wilson, but it's still the Jets, so I don't really have a lot of confidence there either. Like, the AFC East is literally, there's Buffalo and then there's everybody else. There may not be a single division in the NFL where it is so one team and everybody else, and the gap is as large as it is in the AFC East, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you're looking, and every time I've thought about Buffalo being like, oh, it's Miami's year, or the Jets, right before Aaron Rodgers' injury, I was like, young defense, young running back, young wide receiver. Maybe it's the Jets' year. And then it's just like Buffalo just shows up. They can get rid of Stephon Diggs. Amari Cooper can be in and out of the games. They can only have James Cook. The defense gets older. But somehow Buffalo still remains at the top. Jason, with the Patriots' moves, are you impressed? Do you think they've just wasted a bunch of money? What's your perception of the Patriots after today?
I mean, I think they're identifying the needs. They're marketing themselves as, guys, come over here. We're not afraid to spend some money. So I think this has a two-way street. I think they're definitely signing pieces that they need, but they're throwing around that money to make sure other free agents go, oh, wait, let me look at the Patriots and jump over there and see what they're doing. And then throw Vrabel in there. So I think they're trying. That's at least great to see. There's a lot of teams out there that have even tried. So at least the Patriots are spending their money wisely. The Dobbs pickup, which is a little curious here. I wonder what they're going to do with Joe Milton, because I know there's a lot of teams that have been vying for him, so they may trade him away and get some draft capital. So I like what the Patriots are doing. I don't see them going from a worst to first situation, because I don't think anybody has moved that team ahead that far. Drake May has a lot of work to do ahead of him. They still don't really have anything as far as a dynamic wide receiver. Not really good at the running back position. They're still kind of hit and miss in the running back position. So they still have a lot of work to do. They definitely made their defense better, which defense wins championships, but at least keeps you from getting blown out. So Patriots, I still think they need work to do, especially on the offensive side of the football. But throwing around that money has definitely probably started enticing other players to come there. But Buffalo, that's their division to lose. I mean, they just wrapped up Josh Allen for the next 10 years. He had 4 years left on his deal, and then you sign him to another 6 years. So you're talking about 10 years for Josh Allen. So they really, really believe in him right now. But they need to get him some help too. I mean, they signed Josh Palmer. 3 years, $36 million from the Chargers. I think he's a serviceable wide receiver, but they needed that heavy hitter wide receiver. Shakir is a great serviceable wide receiver. I think he's a nice safety valve for Josh Allen, but they're still missing a Devontae Adams, a DK Metcalf. So I'm surprised they were not in the mix with some of those big guys. So don't be surprised to see Buffalo try to move up in this draft to get one of those dynamic young wide receivers that are out there.
Now, this might be a hot take, but I've been thinking about that for, several weeks, that the Buffalo Bills may not want to go after a big name wide receiver, because if you are getting to the AFC Championship game without a number one, you had Stephon Diggs. There was something with Stephon Diggs and that offense, maybe the coaches, quarterback, organization, to where they're like, hey, we need to get Stephon out of the building. As a talented receiver like him, you don't just let him walk for nothing. You go out and get Amari Cooper. And Amari Cooper is getting in games and he's not even being targeted. Yeah. Like, Amari Cooper is usually one of the best route runners in the NFL, and he's like getting one catch off like 3 targets a game. Like that to me is unacceptable for a star receiver. Maybe the Bills are just wanting guys like Khalil Shakir, who can be just a team player in an offense to help, surround Josh Allen with guys who are just trying to get open, trying to make a living. And you have James Cook running the football. Maybe that is Buffalo's recipe, but Mac was in the comments. Typical AFC East, Brady for 30 years until he went on Social Security, and now Josh Allen. But Buffalo Bills curse, no rings. The only team to lose 4 consecutive Super Bowls. 2 of them was to Dallas. We're not going to tell you what decade that was, but it did happen. The Buffalo Bills probably still favorites, but Patriots making some pretty strong moves. Carlton Davis, Harold Landry, Milton Williams, as some of those are. But Carlton Davis leaving Detroit, who was doing great, got to the playoffs. And Aikman, I don't know if you caught my Out of Pocket episode where I predicted Washington to upset Detroit. Everybody called me crazy, and I didn't want to predict it, but it actually happened. And now Carlton Davis is like, I won't stick around Detroit anymore. I'll go to the Boston. But he gets replaced by former Jets corner, probably the best player in this free agency class, DJ Reed. DJ Reed won't be playing opposite side of Sauce Gardner anymore, but he will be joining the Detroit Lions. Aikman, do you think this is a home run pickup for the Detroit Lions?
Well, with Davis leaving, they obviously immediately had a hole at corner. I still think they needed to add to corner regardless. I think it's definitely going to make Terrion Arnold's life a little bit easier on the opposite side of the field. The Lions, they played so much man coverage last year. It's a reason they were flagged for PI a lot, was because they played so much man coverage. And now I think DJ Reed obviously is an upgrade. They got to get Aiden Hutchinson back on the field healthy. I think the one thing that, as we all know, helps the secondary more than anything is when you've got guys up front that can get after the quarterback. And for the Lions defense as a whole, you've got to have a good 1-2 corner punch in that NFC North, because you got Green Bay with a bevy of receivers that they throw out on the field. You've got Chicago now, who has went all in on the offensive line at the way the Bears have retooled there. You got to believe they're going to look to add weapons for Caleb Williams as well. Oh yeah, you're also going to be, playing defense against your former offensive coordinator twice a year now with that Detroit-Chicago matchup now. So this was a needed thing for the Detroit Lions. Again, money is what money is now. This is where we're at in the NFL. We can, shock and awe, jaw open about guaranteed money, this, that, or the other, but this is where we're at now. I mean, it's only going to continue to go up as the salary cap goes up. So overall, I think this was a great move for Detroit. I'm going to be curious to see how everything works out at this being able to move around. Detroit getting DJ Reed, in my opinion, I think is an upgrade, a complete upgrade overall. I'm curious to see how it works, because this is his chance now. Sauce took all the attention in New York while DJ Reed kind of played number 2. This is his chance to be a true number 1 corner now.
And would give him that. Like, this is his chance. He played for the San Francisco 49ers. He's played with Seattle. He spent his last 3 years in Detroit. He has 6 career interceptions. He didn't have one last year but he's really become solid and honestly has probably helped Sauce Gardner adjust to the NFL like he has. Chris from Dugout Debrief, ain't helping the secondary is beneficial for Detroit, saying it's why they fell in the playoffs so quickly, obviously getting torched by rookie quarterback Jane Daniels. Jason, that's why I think Detroit's not done. I feel like Detroit, as great of a corner DJ Reed is, I think it is the best sign we've seen so far in free agency, not including trades. I think it's the best pure free agent signing we have. But you look at the rest of their secondary, and it's just not much. Obviously, Carlton Davis going to join the Patriots in New England, but it's Amik Robertson. Brian Branch likes to play the nickel. He's kind of a safety transferred into a nickel corner. But you need somebody opposite side DJ Reed because, I mean, you look at a lot of the teams in the NFC, you got to defend the pass. And if Aiden Hutchinson isn't healthy and, if you're not getting pressure on the quarterback, it leaves your secondary susceptible. And I think that was Detroit's weakness, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, Detroit, they had 19 players on injured reserve last year, and the only way they could win games was outscoring guys. That's why you had some of those 30, 40-point games. They needed to score that many points. So the DJ Reed addition was great, but they still need a lot of work they do. I hope they get a lot of their guys healthy and back. I think that'll help them tremendously. But don't be surprised to see the Lions making some moves in the draft to really focus on the defense. They got enough offensive weapons. They don't really need to do much there. Maybe a tweak here and there on the offensive line, but that defense is Detroit's focus right now. Because if they just held teams, they could have been in the Super Bowl last year, but they couldn't stop anything. They could not stop, Buffalo. They couldn't stop anybody. So the Lions, this was a great pickup. But their biggest pickup is going to be Hutchinson, Anzalone, those guys coming back healthy. I think they really need those guys to be their big boppers right now because without them, you saw what happened. They got to score 40 points.
Yeah, and even that can sometimes not be enough. And you did mention the draft. Detroit picks 28th. I know the Gridiron Address recently has been doing a lot more draft coverage for Boom Broadcasting. If you've missed those episodes, they're available on demand through our Boom Broadcasting YouTube channel. And picking 28th, I mean, you could have a guy like Thomas from Florida State. You could have Hairston from Kentucky. I mean, this is a really deep cornerback class that you could potentially get somebody. I know Emin Waryi from South Carolina. He's probably more of a safety kind of guy, but there's going to be options. There's going to be options for Detroit, even at the tail end of the draft. But we still got some time for the draft. Some big free agency news dropping today. We talked about Sam Darnold to Seattle. We talked about DJ Reed Detroit. We talked about all the moves that the New England Patriots have made. But one thing we haven't had a chance to touch on yet is the New York Jets find their quarterback. And Drew Code Sports Talk dropping in. What's up? Tons of good moves today. And he's continuing. Cliffhanger. Next season is, drum roll, gonna look very different. That's why we love free agency. It just brings fresh air into football. And as painful as 6 months without football is, they always dominate the headlines with free agency, the combine, the draft, training camp, preseason. Then you're kicking off the season, having a pizza party with your buddies, watching the Super Bowl champions play on Thursday night. It's always the NFL, even in the calendar year. And he's so excited, his fingers hit send too early. That's okay. I've done that before. But I want to know, are you guys excited about Justin Fields going to the Jets? We talked about this younger team, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson still there, Aaron Rodgers, complete failure, complete disaster, almost as big of a disaster as Brett Favre going from Green Bay to the New York Jets. We won't talk about that too much today, but the Jets failed experiment with Aaron Rodgers and all his, friends coming into town. And now they're changing course. They may have seen something from Justin Fields in Chicago. They may have seen something from Justin Fields before Russell Wilson got healthy. Do you think Justin Fields is the guy for the Jets, or is this just, New face, same story for the New York Jets at quarterback. Jason, you're a New York guy. You like the other team, but how do you feel Justin
Same
Fields will do?
building. Same building.
Same
It doesn't
building.
matter. Just change color. I think this is a really good pickup for the Jets. Now, is Justin Fields their long-term quarterback? Probably not. So I think this is kind of that bridging the gap. Do the Jets spend that 7th round pick to try to move up and get another quarterback? Do they do a Atlanta Falcons thing where you sign Justin Fields and then you have his heir apparent and you draft him in the 1st round? That's going to be interesting to see because the Jets like to do Jets things sometimes, so you really wonder what they're thinking. But this is definitely an upgrade for an ailing Aaron Rodgers. You got a quarterback that can actually run and get out of the pocket. So, but just what are you going to put around him? What are you going to do with that offensive line? You have 2 stud running backs in that backfield right now that really were non-existent last year. So you better bolster that offensive line really well for Justin Fields, because if he has time and he gets coached, he can actually be a really good quarterback. He's not great, but he can move in the pocket. He can throw the football. I think he can win you some games. He is better than most of the other free agents. I like Justin Fields better than I like Sam Darnold. I liked him better than some of the other free agent quarterbacks that are out there. So I think that was a really good pickup for the Jets. I wouldn't have hated him in New York on the other side of the football because we definitely need some quarterback help, a.k.a. we only have Tommy Cutlets on the roster right now, which is a little scary, but that's a whole nother story. But Jets, it was a good move, but what are you going to continue to do? You still need a lot more pieces. You still got to figure out what you're going to do on that offensive line. And you got to figure out that defense a little bit too, because you had some guys leaving on that defense. So it was a good move. They didn't pay too much. It's not like they gave them a ton of money and and a ton of years. So they're not hooked into him like Atlanta was with Kirk Cousins, the ultimate thief of contracts. I want his agent, please, because he seems to these contracts just fall in his lap. But good job for the Jets for now. I will hold my applause till maybe as we get closer to the draft to see what they're going to do.
Well, Jason, you shared exactly why I don't think Justin Fields is going to succeed at all with the New York Jets. Now, people who have been hearing me for several years know I've never been high on Justin Fields. His time in Chicago was a little lackluster for me. But again, it was Chicago, so I'm not going to hold it against them. I'm not going to hold Chicago against them. And in Pittsburgh, he seemed to be doing well while Russell Wilson wasn't on the field. They decided to switch to Russell Wilson after a hot Justin Fields start. For whatever reason, that was Mike Tomlin's decision. And he had a pretty good gig, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, career high in completion percentage. But that was Pittsburgh. And Aikman, the reason I think Aaron Rodgers wasn't as successful was because of his ego. And in addition to that, it was the offensive line. The Jets' offensive line was atrocious. I mean, so bad. You had an aging Tyron Smith as your best offensive lineman. And now you're going to put Justin Fields back there, who needs the protection to be successful. And he's not going to have that. And Podcast Me saying it's because it was the Bears. That's not true at all.
It is.
I think it's just
terrible. The Bears were horrible.
There's no successful Ohio State quarterback.
Trash. Coaching staff was trash.
Yeah, but Justin Fields might be trash with the Jets. Aikman, it might be because of the offensive line.
Anything's better than
I don't
Aaron
think I'm out of pocket for that.
No, I mean this. I understood why the Jets made the move because they had to, and at the same time, though, I worry about this move because of that offensive line you're talking about. Justin Fields is going to have to run for his life all around because there's going to be defenders flying at him left and right. I don't know. Again, I mean, there's a scenario here where Justin Fields and Aaron Rodgers are literally handing each other opposite colored jerseys on the way out of their respective doors with things that have been talked about today, with the talks of Pittsburgh and Aaron Rodgers at the negotiating table with each other. I mean, I know you've got enough ego issues in Pittsburgh between DK Metcalf and George Pickens, much less you mix in an Aaron Rodgers possibly with that, and that needs to be on Hard Knocks, possibly just because of the uniqueness that could bring to the table. But again, it's the Jets. I don't know. Again, like I said with Seattle, I don't know what the vision is. I don't know really what they're trying to do. We'll see how Justin Fields works out. I never thought Pittsburgh should have benched him because I thought he had done enough to keep his job in the regular season last year. So we'll see what happens. But there's a big question mark for me here. There's still a lot of unknown. What is the Jets outside of Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall going to put around him?
And it doesn't look like much because they basically replaced the Jets and that young core with Aaron Rodgers and his buddies. So, I mean, jury's still out with that. And Podcast Me saying Mike Tomlin will retire with that locker room. So Aikman brought this up. Podcast Smitty is also piggybacking off of this. So I did want to pose this to you guys because we did see that Justin Fields going to the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers, without a job right now, he probably doesn't want to retire. And Max saying Rodgers trying to cash in on Tomlin's success. Mike Tomlin, if he were to take on George Pickens with all the wide receiver drama, he's able to take on DK Metcalf. And he's able to take on Aaron Rodgers on top of that. That would be wild. That Pittsburgh also just made a deal to get Darius Slay earlier today, the former Philadelphia Eagle who won a Super Bowl with the Philadelphia team this past year. But I feel like Aaron Rodgers would be such an uncharacteristic move for a Steelers organization. He should wear a sign that says, "Do not touch." Aikman, are you okay with Aaron Rodgers being in Pittsburgh, or who do you think is throwing the ball to DK Metcalf and George Pickens in 2025?
I mean, if you're sitting here telling me my options are Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson at this point in their careers, does it get much worse if you're Mike Tomlin to have to pick from at this stage in your career? I would have rather kept Justin Fields. Like, if you're asking me between the three, a potential Aaron Rodgers, bring back Russell Wilson, or bring back Justin Fields, I would have gladly given Justin Fields the same deal he got with the Jets to bring him back, and I wouldn't have paid Rodgers or Russell Wilson any amount of attention the rest of the way, and I would have just rolled with Justin Fields. Now, they didn't do it, and it looks like they may end up going because Russell Wilson has that connection with DK Metcalf from their time in Seattle. You've got the Aaron Rodgers news that came up today. I just think Pittsburgh might be desperate because they look at their division and they see Baltimore obviously being what Baltimore is. You've got a Cincinnati team that you're trying to figure out. Burrow can play. Burrow's a top-end quarterback. They've got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins for now, but like if you're Pittsburgh, I almost feel the desperation vibes are coming out big time, and I think they're panicking to a degree where they're really going to do something they regret.
And for now, that's the thing is for now, Cincinnati has T. Higgins, and we're keeping up with T. Higgins. I keep refreshing my browser to see if Trey Hendrickson's finally got his trade that he's so desperately wanted. And that was a huge discussion point between me and Cody when he was on Out of Pocket last week. Jason, is it Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball to DK and George Pickens this year, or where's Aaron going? Who's the quarterback in Pittsburgh if you don't see that marriage happening?
Well, again, I'd rather him go there than go to the New York Giants. So Pittsburgh have him. You think of the Steel City, you think of gritty and toughness. They had Ben Roethlisberger, gritty, tough. After that, they have really fallen flat and not been able to find his heir apparent. Kenny Pickett, obviously, traded away. They've tried some experiments, the Russell Wilson experiment. I, too, think they should have kept Justin Fields. I think Russell Wilson should have been benched in that playoff game, and they should have put Justin Fields in there because Russell Wilson, I think, is pretty much done. Look, he's had a great career. You got your chip. Fade away in the sunset. Don't hang around like an old Joe Namath, please, because people are just going to keep making fun of you. Pittsburgh, I don't know what they're doing. That's another one of those teams that is just so confusing. Mike Tomlin always has them in the playoffs. Hasn't had a losing record in 18 years that he's been there. So it's a phenomenal organization. Why can't get better quarterback prospects, a better quarterback, free agents? I don't understand why they can't get somebody in there. I like the DK move. I would have rather seen DK in New York. I think he would have been better with Neighbors, with him and Pickens. I think that's going to be a weird dynamic, especially because he has so many on the field issues. So I would have thought you would have brought somebody in that maybe would have kind of been a little more of a father figure kind of deal. So bringing in DK, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, you're going to have to get him the ball somehow because DK Metcalf is a diva wide receiver. I know Tomlin knows how to deal with those kind of diva wide receivers. Dealt with Antonio Brown all those years. I mean, so he's used to, dealing with that kind of distraction. Let's just call it that. But man, I don't know. Aaron Rodgers, there's no caves in Pittsburgh, so I don't know what Aaron's going to do with the meditation and all that stuff. So I don't see that kind of vibe in a Pittsburgh Steelers locker room. So I don't think it really matches. You're going to have to give him a lot of money. I don't think he's a good bridge quarterback. He doesn't want to mentor somebody. So even if you go out in the draft and you get a good young quarterback, because there's some pretty good young quarterbacks in this draft, especially in the second round there, a Jackson Dart, some of that kind of someone that can sling the football for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But if you put Aaron Rodgers there, he's not going to want to, mentor this kid. He did that with Jordan Love, and you see the issues he had with that. So Pittsburgh, it's one of those head-scratching moves. I hope they find another option. But if it becomes Aaron Rodgers, what Aaron Rodgers are you going to get? Are you going to get the old one-legged Aaron Rodgers, or does he come back a little bit healthier and a little more invigorated because this is a little better organization than the New York Jets? That remains to be seen.
And for me, Aaron Rodgers and Pittsburgh, it doesn't sound like a good marriage. It sounds like a short-term relationship. The girl you had a crush on in high school, you see her when she's in her early 40s. She's got 4 kids by 3 different dads, and you're just like, oh, I mean, look at you. You've only had 1 ring in your life. Let's go. It just doesn't sound good at all. Especially
it's like nice rims on a hoopty. You don't put 20s on a Geo Metro. It's just it doesn't work.
I mean, Aaron Rodgers to Pittsburgh doesn't make sense to me. No. The 2 places that would make sense in some sort of mind to where, one, the most sense is Aaron Rodgers retiring. The 2 that make sense, you could say San Francisco, but they're probably trying to put themselves in position to sign Brock Purdy. I know Rodgers has always been linked to the 49ers in his career just because of where he grew up. Yeah. But the 2 teams that could make some sense to me is the AFC East rival Miami Dolphins. If the Dolphins are like, hey, we really like Tua, but we're worried about his health, maybe Aaron Rodgers can come down for a year, see if that excites Tyreek Hill, if they can use Jalen Waddle, if they can use the running backs, and try to make something there. Aaron Rodgers playing in warm weather, or let's just go ahead and go the far cycle.
You forgot
let's go to Minnesota.
As to say, there you go, Minnesota.
Let's go to Minnesota.
Bring the Brett Favre connection. Just let's lock it in right there, man. Just mirror his. Just bring it. Let's go.
They will make a documentary one day if that happens. That will be a documentary. If Aaron Rodgers goes to Minnesota, we will get a documentary about Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers and the careers unfolding the way they did and the connection. I mean, you can't write a script any better than that.
Beautiful. They got rid of Darnold. They need a bridge for JJ in case he's not. Oh, it's perfect. Go sit on Aaron Rodgers' lawn right now, please, guys. Oh, it'd be perfect.
And maybe that's why the Vikings were like, hey, Seattle, yeah, go sign Darnold for 30 plus million a year. And that's what they'll be okay with. And we just got some news coming in, by the way. This has been talked about for the last few days, but Adam Schefter just tweeted out 1 minute ago that the Rams are planning to release Cooper Kupp after the start of the new league year, unless a trade materializes. We talked about this, a little bit on last week's Out of Pocket, so we don't want to dive too much in. I do want to hear Aikman's thoughts on his Washington Commanders, the Philadelphia Eagles losing a couple people as well. I want to touch on. But Cooper Kupp, do you think he gets traded or do you think he gets released? And what team would be his best fit, Aikman?
Oh, he's definitely going to get released. I don't think you're going to find a trade partner, but I think as soon as he's released, his agent's phone is going to be ringing. There's going to be, I think, teams that are in more of a contention type of mode are going to be geared towards a Cooper Kupp. He's not a number one at this point in his career. He's a number two. I would like to see him go somewhere that's going to utilize his skill set because he's so good in the middle of the field. That's where he's always been good, is getting open in the middle of the field. I think he could be a guy, if you're breaking in a younger quarterback, he could be a great number 2 or number 3 receiver to have at your disposal. You look at it, if the Giants can figure out what they're going to do on offense, I think he's a guy, you put him on the field with Neighbors, that instantly elevates the Giants offense if they can figure out what they're going to do from a quarterback perspective. I think Dallas can make some sense too if you can figure out a way to make the money work opposite of CeeDee Lamb, because I think there is a needed, a number 2 kind of guy there. I know Washington's already made the deal with Deebo Samuel, but we still have money, and I don't hate the idea of a Cooper Kupp opposite of Terry McLaurin, and with Deebo kind of running around the slot and everything else. I don't hate that either. But I also could see a team that's going to be desperate for offensive help. One of these teams like, the Cleveland Browns or somebody like this that goes after him, trying to get him to come. There was the talks I saw over the weekend where Cleveland had discussions about Brandon Ayuk. If the 49ers want to go completely all out, it blowing everything up, I don't think Cleveland can do much now after the Myles Garrett deal over the weekend from a cap perspective. But there's going to be guys that want Cooper Kupp. I just think all in all, he'll end up going with a contender, somebody he has a chance to get another ring with.
Well, and that's all about like what Cooper Kupp wants. Like, does he want to go get a Super Bowl? Does he want to be the number 1 option? Is he okay being a number 2, a number 3? It would be weird. I mean, I know Aikman would love it, but it'd be weird seeing Deebo and Kupp, battle on opposite sides for many years to only team up in Washington with one of the most loyal wide receivers in the NFL, Terry McLaurin, right next to Mike Evans, who's staying in Tampa, along with Chris Godwin, staying in Tampa as well. Jason, when it comes to Cooper Kupp, where is he playing football?
I mean, we talked about 2 teams already that would be a great fit. First of all, New England. They have some money. I think you get a veteran wide receiver and a veteran presence with Drake May. I think he could work in New England, and he can just go up north and play in Seattle. I can see him being in Seattle. So, I mean, there's a lot of places you can go. Look, Cooper Kupp is a talented wide receiver, but he's been injured. He's injury prone. He's not that number 1 guy anymore. He's a slot 2, maybe a 3. I think you bring him in more as like a character kind of guy. I can even see him in Green Bay with some of those wide receivers, because a lot of those young wide receivers didn't have much focus last year. So you bring in a guy that can focus a team, can be a leader in the locker room, can kind of get that wide receiver room together. I could see him playing there too, but I think there's going to be a lot of guys looking for him. I would be surprised if he does get traded. Maybe a team throws a fourth or a fifth out for him, but I can't see that happening. You should be able to get him, pretty inexpensive when he does get released. But there's a bunch of teams out there that are going to want him. And I can see at least 2 or 3 right now that should be on the horn and maybe trying to make a deal. Maybe throw a couple of draft picks or a draft pick from next year. Don't worry about this year. I mean, if the Rams are that desperate and they're putting this out there, that means they're not getting a lot of offers. So throw something at. I think Cooper Kupp is at least worth a 5th or a 6th round pick in the 2026 draft, or maybe something like that. And you put him on your team. I think he can make an instant impact.
And there's a team that nobody has brought up, but I think would make a lot of sense with a young quarterback that you need to develop. He obviously has his number 1 option, but he doesn't have a number 2 option. And that is the Denver Broncos and Bo Nix. They have Cortland Sutton. If you guys know, and if you've picked him up on fantasy, he does help your fantasy team a bit. Denver obviously has a very, very stout defense. If I'm Denver and I'm looking at the rest of the division, Kansas City is obviously going to be in the market for a wide receiver. Vegas in super rebuild mode. The LA Chargers are like hit and miss, and they'll probably be wanting a wide receiver to pair opposite side of Ladd McConkey. So even if it is just keeping Cooper Kupp away from, Kansas City and LA, the Chargers, I would go after him. Help Bo Nix develop as a young quarterback. And Mac bringing up Jacksonville, who's also made some big moves. You're seeing on the bottom Jordan Lewis, Chuma Edoga, among the likes at Jacksonville now. De'Ami Brown coming from the Washington Commanders, so they're replacing some people. And so that's what Jacksonville's doing. Maybe they want to go after Cooper Kupp. Now, I do want to bring up, we've already talked some NFC East stuff today. And I'm going to ask Aikman real quick what he is thinking about his Washington Commanders, because of all the people on the screen right now, they have been the most active. And we expected that with how much cap space they did have coming in to today's free agency. I did see some news that just came in that Zach Wilson is going to be joining the Miami Dolphins for 1 year, up to $10 million. So maybe instead of Aaron Rodgers, that is their backup plan if Tua's not healthy. I don't know if I'd rather have Zach Wilson or Aaron Rodgers. I'm gonna leave that. I'm gonna leave that out there.
That's plan B. Woo. Come on, Dolphins.
Makes me feel good about bringing Marcus Mariota back to Washington, because I think if you're the Dolphins, why didn't you call Mariota over Zach Wilson? Like, seriously, Zach Wilson doesn't move them. It's not much of an insurance policy, in my opinion.
What is right? Podcast Smitty, what is right? Zach Wilson joined Miami, so that's probably the backup plan. Aaron Rodgers is running out of time and room. Maybe he needs to go to Minnesota if the Vikings are even interested, going that full circle moment with Aaron Rodgers in the Brett Favre circle. But Aikman, your Washington Commanders have made a lot of moves. And they've had some people they've retained. They've had some people that they've signed. And they've had some people they've traded for this offseason. I mean, they re-signed John Bates and Zach Ertz, the tight end duo. You re-signed Bobby Wagner. Everybody said Wagner was washed. I'm like, guys, you don't know what you're doing. You signed. Yeah, watch the tape. The dude is not washed. If anyone was saying that, you were out of pocket. I know who you are. They signed Javon Kinlaw from the 49ers, and then you trade with the 49ers to get Deebo Samuel. And then today you trade to get Laramie Tunsil. They obviously see what's happening in Washington. There's a lot of excitement. And I told people, Houston, they wanted to surround C.J. Stroud after his rookie year with Diggs and Mixon and several other pieces. Didn't quite work out for them. They just had way too many injuries at wide receiver. But Washington has taken a page out of their book, and they're being aggressive in free agency. Aikman, a year later, after being a rookie quarterback and seeing how much success he had to get to the NFC title game, are you encouraged with what Washington has done this offseason so far? And do you think they've propelled themselves to get at least back to the playoffs, maybe even the NFC Championship game.
I definitely like what I'm seeing out of Adam Peters and Dan Quinn so far. It's hard not to. I definitely think, they're trying to build this roster in this next 3-year window we have while Jaden Daniels is on that rookie scale contract before extension talks really take over and go to whatever level we're going to be at from a financial perspective at that point in time. This is what teams who are serious about contending do when they realize they have a good or a really good young quarterback on a rookie deal. You push all your chips to the middle of the table and you go all in to try to make it happen while you have the quarterback playing for basically next to nothing from a quarterback salary perspective. The Javon Kinlaw move, I'm curious to see how this works out because, we released Jonathan Allen. You bring in Javon Kinlaw, who's kind of basically taking the contract that Jonathan Allen had. You're basically swapping money for what he freed up to what Kinlaw is going to be paid. But I think where you really start to see the moves that are going to be effective here for Washington, obviously, getting listen, this Laramie Tunsil thing came out of the blue today. We hadn't heard Laramie Tunsil mentioned once, twice, not in trade talks out of Houston. They do have a new offensive coordinator down there going into this year, so maybe they decided to go in a different direction. But you just don't get guys like Laramie Tunsil available every day. Yes, he was one of the more penalized offensive tackles in football a season ago. The majority of his penalties were false starts, so maybe there was a cadence deal there between him, C.J. Stroud. But you look at the pass blocking percentages since 2021, only 3.3% pressure rate allowed by Laramie Tunsil. 3.3%. He was the 4th rated pass block grade in the NFL out of tackles last year. He's consistently been top 5 for the last 4 or 5 years in the NFL by all the grades. And I'm just like, you don't get guys like this. Now, we paid a decent price to get him with the multiple picks that we give up to get him. I know it was a 2nd and a 4th next year, a 3rd this year with a 7th thrown in there. We're getting a 4th this year back. But again, we haven't had a cornerstone left tackle since Trent Williams left a few years ago and went to San Francisco. You got to have somebody to protect Jaden Daniels' blind side. And again, this is actually upgrading 2 positions with 1 player because it allows us now, rookie left tackle Brandon Coleman, who everybody has said is going to be better suited at guard in the NFL. He played okay at left tackle as a rookie, but now you have the ability to slide him in at guard and immediately get an upgrade there while Sam Cosmi recovers from his torn ACL from the Detroit game in the playoffs. Like, I love this Laramie Tunsil move. This is what you do when you're trying to win, and you're trying to win now. You make the moves necessary to get you there. Debo is another step in that direction as well, because I do think with Cliff Kingsbury calling the offense, you're going to see creative ways that Debo Samuel can be utilized. And Debo knows he's got to be motivated this year. It's a contract year. He's playing it out on this 1 year. There's been all the talk that he's fallen off. He's out of shape. The one thing we know about Debo Samuel, he's physical. He's not afraid to block, which I love, by the way, from a receiver. Anytime I can get a receiver who just loves to block, I'll absolutely go for that any day of the week. But I like what I've seen so far. There's still more moves to be made. I don't know now that we have the capital to go get a Trey Hendrickson. I would love to figure out a way to do it, because back-to-back 17.5 sack seasons speak for themselves for Trey Hendrickson, when he's kind of the guy you're game planning for when you've played Cincinnati the last couple years. It's not like they've had all-stars on the defensive side of the football in Cincinnati. So I like what I'm seeing so far. There's more work to be done, but overall, I like the direction we're going to keep us in the mix for the playoffs at least.
And that's a huge move. And Mac try and play devil's advocate, saying he's playing weak divisions, playing in NFCs with some legit pass rushers. I will say this. Yeah, he played for Miami. Yeah, he played for Houston. They didn't do much while he was there, but let me remind you, and I do want to push back on that. I know he's being more optimistic of Washington getting a really good player, but Laramie Tunsil has had to play against New England when it was in the height of their defense, the Jets when they were in the height of their defense, the Houston Texans, Tennessee, huge defensive team that they had to play against, even Indianapolis for a time. So Laramie Tunsil, he's 30 years old. He'll be 31 at the start of the season. He is tried and true when it comes to players. He was picked 13th overall back in the draft, and he was probably going to be a top 3-4 draft pick if the infamous video didn't come out hours before the NFL draft took place. So, I mean, as much as I hate Washington, that is a really good deal that the Commanders did. I do want to touch on Philadelphia with the EFC East guys here because the Eagles did lose Josh Sweat. They did lose Milton Williams, but there has been breaking news here in the last couple minutes that the Carolina Panthers, they missed out on Milton Williams, but they went out and got Tershawn Wharton from the Kansas City Chiefs, 3 years, more than $54 million, and they guaranteed more than 2/3 of this salary. I mean, Tershawn Wharton is a good player, obviously playing for the Chiefs his entire career. Last season, he had career high in tackles, 29, 18 of those solo, career high 6.5 sacks. He had a forced fumble, obviously helping the Chiefs in ways over the last couple of years, right next to Chris Jones. I mean, Tershawn Wharton's not going to have Chris Jones next to him. He'll have Derek Brown if Derek Brown is healthy. The Panthers miss out on Milton Williams, but they do get Tershawn Wharton. Jason, is that enough of a replacement, or is that more of a knee-jerk reaction to losing out on Milton Williams?
I think that was not so much knee-jerk reaction, but I think that was plan B. So you didn't get him, so you had to regroup. I think this was a good pickup. You got somebody that has some experience, been on a championship team before, so you bring that kind of vibe into your locker room. To me, the Panthers, the biggest deal so far is Jaycee Horn with that 4-year, $400 million deal, $70 million guaranteed. So I mean that right there. This deal is great, but right now that deal is glaring. So if he does not perform, if Jaycee Horn does not perform, I think that's going to be the bigger fail. I don't see the Wharton one unless he does something egregious and really kind of falls off. I think this is going to be a great pickup for Carolina that's going to help in that defensive room. But right now, all eyes are on Jaycee Horn with that big old contract he just signed. So he's the one that has the target on his head right now.
And Aikman, we're in Panther country, and at least in the North Carolina region. You do local high school coverage with the Blue Ridge Football Podcast that people can check out on audio platforms. But the Carolina Panthers getting Tershawn Wharton after missing out on Milton Williams, who goes to the Patriots. Jason mentioned Jaycee Horn's contract extension went out, which I'm not fond of. We'll see how many games Jaycee Horn plays that he's actually active for. He's healthy 1 year, and we're going to throw the bank at him. It's whatever. It's okay. Should Panther fans be optimistic with how today's went?
I mean, the thing with Jaycee Horn scares me. When I saw that this morning, when the news come down, I thought, when this guy is healthy, he's a really good corner. But that's the catch. He hasn't consistently been healthy enough where you feel like, okay, we're going to wake up and make this kid the highest paid defensive back in NFL history with an average annual value of $25 million a year. I mean, you beat Jalen Ramsey's number by $1 million from a few years back when he signed with the Dolphins, or when he was in the prime of his career. And it's just like, maybe this works out. Maybe Dan Morgan's thinking a couple steps ahead. Could be, but I'm not going to put the cart before the horse here, because the move worries me from a long-term perspective if Jaycee Horn cannot stay healthy. The other thing is, you look at the moves Panthers have done today, how many defensive linemen can one team fit on the roster? You've got Derek Brown that's going to be coming back from injury, and they've made multiple moves on that D line today. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do defensively. I know that they're could be needing some linebacker help there too. I know they were going to let Shaq Thompson walk in free agency as well. So there's a lot of things I'm curious about with the Panthers, because I kind of thought they would be in on one of these bigger receivers as well, trying to make a deal happen to help Bryce Young. You talk about, DK Metcalf would have been an interesting spot there if the Panthers could have figured out a way to make that work. There's another spot where I don't think Cooper Kupp's going to go somewhere like that at this point in his career. But there's somebody I really thought would be involved in the receiver market to help Bryce Young out. But so I don't know. I have no idea. I'm iffy on the Jaycee Horn thing. I've thought about it all day, and I just feel like TBD, because I'm not sold that he can stay healthy.
Yeah, I can't trust him. Like, I was doing a Panther podcast with Podcast Smitty and a good friend of ours, Ryan, on another channel, and we would always talk about like Jaycee Horn not being available. And I'm like, hey guys, while the price is still like there, while the value is still there, trade him, because he's proven he can't stay healthy. He is a talent, and you can have a team bank on that alone. But that's not what the Carolina Panthers did. They made Jaycee Horn the highest paid corner, and of course, just resetting the market. He won't always be the highest paid corner, but in and of itself, that's what the Carolina Panthers are staring at. But Tershawn Wharton also going to the Carolina Panthers, and that's where we're at right there. Mentioned Philadelphia. They lose out on Milton Williams. He doesn't go to Carolina. He goes to New England, but they also lose Josh Sweat to Arizona. Josh Sweat getting a deal done with the Cardinals. And that to me is like what the Carolina Panthers are probably trying to do, is like load up their defensive front, trying to copy the Philadelphia Eagles style, because they can't copy the tush push with a 5'8" quarterback like Bryce Young. But I know we all are hoping for Philadelphia's demise here on this screen. That's why we didn't invite an Eagles guy onto the show today. But Aikman, are you concerned about the Philadelphia Eagles losing these two pieces, or do you think they'll be just fine?
I think they're going to be just fine. You've still got, Jordan Davis. You've still got all the company up front on that D line, and then again that secondary with Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, Reed Blankenship. You brought Zach Bond back at linebacker, who I think was honestly, in my opinion, getting Zach Bond back the way he played, he would have been coveted. He would have had an offer sheet from who knows how many teams in the NFL after the way he played this past year. The Eagles are still going to be the team to beat in the NFC East. It is still going to be their division going into the season. I think Philadelphia is going to be just fine. I think the bigger news is over time now, they've given Saquon the big money. They gave him the extension. What does that look like 2 or 3 years down the road? If Saquon can keep up his level of play, then watch out, because Philadelphia could be on to something really big. But if he was to start to fall off, like running backs tend to do in the NFL, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the city of brotherly love.
Yeah, and that team really runs on Saquon Barkley. He was obviously the X factor. I think he was personally robbed of the MVP award. I do not think Josh Allen deserved it. No disrespect to the highest paid player in the NFL's history now, but Saquon really elevated what Philadelphia was able to do. And nobody knows that better than Jason, who got to watch him all those years with the New York Giants and couldn't elevate Daniel Jones of all people. But Jason,
an elevator couldn't elevate Daniel Jones. Okay. So,
that escalated quickly. Get out the escalator, Jason. I'm going to need you to run some stairs. Okay.
Okay. I'm good. I'm good.
Is Philadelphia going to run up those Rocky Balboa stairs once again, even after losing these two players?
They are loaded. They have been loaded. They do great in the draft. So I am not worried about the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm worried about the Philadelphia Eagles as a Giants fan, but I don't think that these two moves really hurt them at all. I can see them picking a couple other pieces up in the draft. I also can see them picking up another complimentary back to go with Saquon Barkley, because they did give him a boatload of money. So, because I can see Gainwell probably not being there next year. So I wouldn't be surprised with that top pick in the draft, them going out and getting themselves a running back. But no, they reload. They know how to do it. They've been doing it fantastically for years now. They're like shark's teeth. They lose one, they just grow another one.
And that's unfortunate for all the guys on the screen. And that may be why they have so much D-line depth. They know, like, hey, there's going to be players who get paid. Maybe they can go after people in the draft, like they've went after Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith in the past. And that's the recipe for Philadelphia, is controlling both the offensive and the defensive lines. But it's been a pretty busy day when it comes to free agency. Some news that's been hitting right now. We just got done talking about the Carolina Panthers. They went out and re-signed Mike Jackson, 2-year, $14.5 million. So he's going to be playing opposite side of Jaycee Horn. The Colts ended up getting Chardavius Ward, but they aren't retaining Ryan Kelly, who's going to Minnesota on a 2-year, $18 million deal. Cody Barton going to Tennessee, 3 years, $21 million. And we got the Pittsburgh Steelers agreeing to terms with Malik Harrison, 2 years, $10 million. So there's some moves happening right here as we get to a close on Out of Pocket. But I wanted to hit you guys with some rapid fire questions with the end of this free agency special. If there's some crazy breaking news here in the last couple of minutes, we may stay on a few more minutes, but want to be respectful of everybody's time. We appreciate you guys watching Out of Pocket and our free agency special. If this is your first time joining us, hit that subscribe button. We're about 20 away from 500, and I think the subscription's free. As a matter of fact, it is free. So it just shows your support for not only myself, not only Out of Pocket, but Jason and several of the other content creators who have been in the comments, who have been doing some really hard work. Also, special shout out to Sean, having the largest viewed podcast on YouTube with over 340 some views last week with It Stinks, FBI Most Wanted, FBI International canceled. And so Sean's been doing great to make sure we're not just a channel for sports. We're a channel for people's passions and giving them a platform to talk about their passions. But one of my passions is NFL free agency. I look forward to this day. And guys, I want to ask you question number one: who has made moves today and early on in this offseason period, but are still going to perform poorly in 2025? Because we all know those teams exist. Aikman, do you have a team on the tip of your tongue?
You know, I really want to lean New England, but I have a lot of built up, respect for Mike Vrabel for what he can do as a head coach, and I think he will have them competitive. But as we all know, sometimes being the biggest spender in free agency doesn't necessarily equate to, more wins. Necessarily, you don't always want to be the quote-unquote big winner of free agency, because sometimes that title does not work out very well. I'd rather be the team that makes the more calculated, sneaky, under-the-radar kind of moves to get better. And so, but if I had to pick a team right now, I'm going to lean New England, because I still think they're a year or two away. Again, this all hinges on the development of Drake May and what they're able to do. I think the reason you've seen them attack the defensive side of the football the way that they have is because Mike Vrabel probably knows, because I'm sure he's watched all the tape from Drake May's rookie year, the best way to have a chance to succeed is have a defense that can get after opposing quarterbacks and force turnovers and give May every chance he can on the field to do something. He knows that having a strong defense is going to be their only chance, I think, collectively to put W's in the win column.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to put those dubs in the win column. Mac answering Browns. for the question, who's done work in free agency in the offseason and will still underperform. The Browns, obviously, convincing Myles Garrett that he doesn't want to get traded. He just wants to get paid 4 years, $160 million, $40 million a year. And podcast may saying whoever sells for Aaron Rodgers, which that might be the Giants. Jason,
no,
who do you think's underperforming in 2025 after their moves?
The Houston Texans. I mean, you signed Braxton Berrios to help your wide receiver core because you have Nico Collins, and that's about it. Tank Dell, unfortunately, I think he's kind of done. You're not going to have Stephon Diggs. So you bring him in. That's kind of a weak move. You bring in Derek Barnett for a 1-year deal, big deal. And then you trade away Tunsil, who, CJ Stroud had a sophomore slump off year last year and needed help on the offensive line. So what do? Your best offensive line player, you trade him away. So I know they got a bunch of picks for it, but to me, Houston didn't look very good today and doesn't look good moving forward unless they start making some bigger splashes out there because they didn't look good last year. So they need to do better.
Yeah, they do need to do better. We'll see if they bounce back with CJ Stroud. Now, I could easily take a shot at the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Take a shot.
They are the team that always signs everybody, and for some reason, people want to go to Jacksonville. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Like, if you're going to go to Florida, pick Tampa, pick the Dolphins. If you want that no state tax, come to Dallas or Houston. Like, go to one of those teams. But why would you go to Jacksonville? I do want to say shout out Jordan Lewis, who has been a phenomenal Cowboy since he was a 3rd-round pick back in 2017. He's probably our best Michigan Wolverine drafted to the Cowboys, especially in recent memory. So shout out to him. But yeah, I don't see what Jacksonville's doing. You're really going to trust Duval to do it every single time. And by the way, Daniel, I want to go ahead and say, this is exactly why we do live streams, because I would like to tell you guys that it is totally okay. Have you guys ever been standing up to pee and then you have to go number 2 and now you're stuck? I mean, there's no problem. Every single time, maybe about 90% of the time. But Daniel, we appreciate you watching, my friend. Podcast me, Duval. There's just absolutely no rhyme or reason why Jacksonville makes all these moves. They're going to be a 3-win team next year, and it's going to be terrible. If I didn't have to do a Jacksonville dig, I'd do it for Seattle. I mean, you just got Sam Darnold, who doesn't have Justin Jefferson, who doesn't have Jordan Addison, who doesn't have Aaron Jones, who doesn't have that Vikings defense, who doesn't have that infrastructure in place. And you're going to trade away DK Metcalf, your number 1 option. You're going to release Tyler Lockett, your number 2 option. It's just, it doesn't make sense why you would lock so much money and so many years into Sam Darnold rather than being like, hey, do we think a quarterback's here in the draft? Oh, we don't. Maybe we'll just tank in general for that opportunity. But I don't want to see what those teams were doing. And guys, please do not attack who I think you're going to attack. Who do you think needs to do something? And they've been quiet this entire time.
No, come on. All right. Yep. I think it's time to go.
I want you guys to get creative outside of the box. Jason, do you have a team that is not on my polo?
Man. Well, I'm going to stick with my boys, my New York Giants. They did sign Darius Slayton to a 3-year, $36 million deal. So they did get a wide receiver. But overall, they got Paulson Adebo from the Saints. Other than that, Giants, what are you doing? I have not seen any splash. We have no splash on the defense to add next to Thibodeau. The offensive line, you guys, you don't have a quarterback. You got Tommy Cutlets, and that's it. You didn't go out and sign So I'm going to stick with my Giants. Very disappointed in the New York Giants right now, not making any moves. You didn't go try to get DK Metcalf. You didn't go try to get Devontae Adams to put next to Malik Neighbors. What are you doing? So I'm going to go Giants. My other one, just to throw in there, so I'm not too much of a homer, would be the Arizona Cardinals. They just seem to be just vanilla every year. You give Kyler Murray kinds of money. You have Marvin Harrison Jr. there. You have a stud tight end in McBride. James Conner's getting a little bit older, but he's still a pretty good running back. But yet you guys never do anything to kind of get over the hump. So a little disappointed in the Cardinals also, if I had to throw another team in there.
Cardinals, they did attain Josh Sweat, so I think that is a pretty underrated signing. Aikman, what team are you most disappointed with their lack of activity this offseason so far?
Well, I think obviously it's easy for people to point the finger at Dallas, especially on this show. I mean, it's easy for people to do it. And honestly, it makes a lot of sense. But the problem is we all know what's coming, because chances are Dallas is not going to trade Micah Parsons. And so what they're getting ready to do is Jerry's going to open his checkbook when it's too late, and you're going to be paying Micah Parsons the Myles Garrett money. You're going to be resetting. He's going to be resetting the market on top of Dak Prescott, on top of CeeDee Lamb. And then you're going to have some kid from App State playing somewhere else because they can't afford anybody else.
What's wrong with that?
On another spot of the field. But nonetheless, it's like there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying from an NFL perspective, I just don't get it. Like, you have pieces there, but then like Jordan Lewis is a guy I would have tried to bring back. Like, that's a guy that I thought, was somebody. I knew he would not have a lack of suitors. I figured somebody would pick him up, but I thought I would see more out of Dallas, especially after last year's debacle with the Derrick Henry situation. I thought they might try to redeem themselves a little bit, but we've not seen it so far. There's still a lot of time left. Remember, it's only day one of the legal tampering period, so the new league year doesn't start till Wednesday. But one more team that I'm curious about, and this is because they hold the number one overall pick for now, is the Tennessee Titans, because they went out and gave Dan Moore Jr. a lot of money today from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I think Dan Moore was the beneficiary of a limited tackle market and a team that had a little bit of money that was desperate for need on the offensive line. Obviously, we've seen that Tennessee has an interest in Russell Wilson, so maybe if that's the route they go, I don't even know. Like, by the way, I see the comment. That's great.
You're not the only one. Podcast me saying Dexter Coakley catching it straight from Aikman. And Mac is like, Dexter Coakley was awesome. I mean, hey.
Yes, he's one of the all-time great Mountaineers and happened to play for the Dallas Cowboys. So, yes, that is true. But I don't – if I'm Tennessee – I don't bring in Russell Wilson either, but they've got to do something. That franchise has nothing set up for the future, like literally nothing. They hold this number one overall pick. Do you draft Abdul Carter? Do you draft Travis Hunter at number one? Where do they go with that number one pick? I don't know that I would justifiably take a quarterback number one in this draft. I really don't. Unless you're just over the moon, like with Cam Ward. Possibly, but I don't see it in this draft. But there's somebody, they've made no moves. Now, who knows? Maybe they're lurking around trying to work a deal for Kirk Cousins, for all we know. For God's sakes, he might as well go live in Tennessee and get another contract somewhere down the road, since that's all he seems to do is get one contract after another. But the Titans are a team I've looked at and I've thought, they've added nothing if they have to run it back with Will Levis, if they don't figure out something at quarterback, like, outside of Dan Moore, who, again, I just think was the beneficiary of a limited tackle market and money to spend. I'm not seeing it. And I go back to this too. I want to make this one point real quick. If the Texans had made Laramie Tunsil available to other NFL GMs, how many teams would have been in on this bidding for a guy like Laramie Tunsil? Like, we heard nothing. Nothing about this was made public. This is a top 5 or 6 offensive tackle in the NFL. I guarantee you there would have been a ton of teams that would have been in on Laramie Tunsil had they realized he was even remotely available to even think about.
I agree with that, and I hate that they didn't let everybody know they were shopping Laramie Tunsil. And this is another Luka Doncic situation. It's a Luka light situation, let people know, get your highest price, and we'll keep bargaining. So I will go ahead and say it because Podcast Smitty is he's threatened me in the comments, and I can say it because I'm a Cowboys fan. But my friend sent me this earlier today that the Dallas Cowboys, in free agency, have not signed a free agent over $6 million per year. And this is a free agent. This isn't counting Osa, who returns to the team. This is an outside free agent over $6 million per year since 2015. That is 10 years ago. And that person was actually signed on my dad's birthday 10 years ago, Greg Hardy from the Carolina Panthers, who had some off-the-field issues at the time. But Greg Hardy, when he was on the field, he was still a player to be reckoned with. And just so you guys know, it's not the salary cap. The salary cap increases every year. In the last 10 years, the salary cap has increased by nearly $136 million. And with Jerry Jones and all of his knowledge about owners' meetings and knowing the cap and talking about last year being all in and doing nothing, and then saying that they're going to be selectively aggressive this year, and it's like, okay, well, do something. I really love the moves they made before today, going and get Osa Odigizua, re-signing CJ Godwin, even the long snapper. You can't always hate the long snapper signing. But it's like you see teams like, okay, this team is actively trying to get better. The Patriots, look, they went after and got Harold Landry. The Patriots went out and got Carlton Davis, while the Lions went out and got DJ Reed, while the 49ers went out and got Charvarius Ward, while the Saints traded with the Patriots to get Godshaw. They're just players and teams where, hey, we couldn't probably afford DK Metcalf at $30 million a year on that 5-year, $150 million deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers and Seattle Seahawks. But you're telling me we couldn't go get Hassan Reddick for a 1-year rental to pair opposite side of Micah Parsons? You're telling me we couldn't try to convince Bobby Wagner out of the building for Washington? You're telling me we couldn't have convinced Javon Kinlaw to not go to Washington? You're trying to tell me they couldn't have tried to retain Jordan Lewis, who has been a staple for that organization at that nickel spot, one of the best nickel corners in the NFL. You couldn't tell me we couldn't go after Hufanga from the 49ers, who signed with the Denver Broncos today. There's all these players, and it's okay, I'm just refreshing my browser looking for news, and I'm not seeing any real news except former Cowboys wide receiver Michael Gallup is going to visit an NFC East rival tomorrow, the Washington Commanders. And it's okay, well, if you believe in Gallup, maybe he's willing to come back to Dallas, the only place he's played for. Maybe you should go and try to get Michael Gallup from staying within the division, bring him home. Especially when you need somebody opposite side of CD Lamb. So that's my only take. Guess me. Actually, he was going to say the Saints. It's whatever. It's whatever. And remembering Greg Hardy's dominance, but that's the only thing. I can say that because I'm wearing the polo right now. But yeah, Dallas, I'm poking you with a stick. Be aggressive. You just saw your two rivals in the NFC Championship game. So obviously a formula you've been using the last 10 years hasn't been working. So go mix up the formula, add a little more salt, take a little less paprika off. Like, you can do it. But that I digress. That was my soapbox. But guys, this has been an amazing NFL free agency recap show. There's news being brought within minutes of, us being on air, and we've tried our best to cover everything we could today. And we appreciate you guys, but I also appreciate these two staying on a little extra, making sure you had the best free agency coverage in general. Aikman, you have your own podcast. Let people know where they can find it and what they can expect from your latest episode.
Yeah, it's the Blue Ridge Football Podcast. You can find it wherever you get a podcast at, whether it's Apple, whether it's Spotify, you name it, you've got it available. This episode I just dropped about 5 o'clock this evening with Joel Bryant from High School OT in Raleigh, talking about the new realignment cycle, new conferences that have been set as North Carolina gets set to go to 8A classification levels starting this fall. So we've been 1A through 4A for years, and now North Carolina is going 1A through 8A. And so we're going to talk with him, Joe Bryant from High School OT, on this episode. Again, in the off season, we just kind of, as news happens, I'll record a pod, get it out there, and then as we get back closer to the start of the season in late July and early August, we'll start turning out weekly episodes once again.
Well, and that's going to be awesome. He did a really good job. Last year was your first year with that podcast,
it was,
right?
It was.
So I'm super excited, especially a local guy. If you know where Aikman and I live, like, we're locals, and it's awesome to see like somebody like around my age, like, just thriving in the podcast game, in the radio game. So it's awesome whenever I get to have Aikman on. And it's also cool when I get to have Mr. NY himself, 3 from Deep, here on the show. And you dropped your basketball podcast. What can people expect there?
Just going over that MVP race, man. Nikola Jokic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. It's been a heck of an MVP race right now. LeBron's injury, what that does to the Lakers. Can Luka right that ship and keep the Lakers afloat, getting closer to the playoffs? So we talk about that and more right here on Boom Broadcasting. Join me Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday at 12 p.m. 3 from Deep, 3 times a week. Check it out.
Check it out. He's doing great covering Monday, Wednesday, Saturdays at noon. Tonight I'll be on the nightcap following Raw with Mouthing Off with Mike. It's emanating from Madison Square Garden. The main event, Seth Rollins, CM Punk inside a steel cage. And so we'll be recapping all of that afterwards. We got quick hits from Podcast Smitty dropping tomorrow at noon. He's talking about Rick Pitino. So you're going to want to watch that episode because it's going to be great. And I know as soon as I end the live stream, there's going to be some big breaking news, but don't worry. Out of Pocket's going to be back tomorrow at 5:30. You won't want to miss it. And guys, for Aikman, for Jason, for myself, this has been Out of Pocket on Boom Broadcasting, and we'll catch you back here tomorrow.
Well, that's it. I really hope you enjoyed it. We had a ball making it. Thank you very much.